Every time you step onto a plane, you're placing your trust in this massive, invisible system of maintenance and repair. But what happens when that system gets pushed to its absolute breaking point? Today, we're going to go behind the scenes and uncover a hidden crisis brewing in the skies, a perfect storm that's putting every single flight we take to the test. So here's the deal. We're all rushing back to the airports, right? Air travel is booming like never before. But underneath it all, a nasty combination of problems is putting immense pressure on the very supply chain that keeps those planes safe. We're talking about a complex, global, and increasingly stressed out system.
Okay, so what's really going on here? Well, the root of this whole problem is a simple yet incredibly powerful conflict. A record-breaking demand for travel is slamming head-on into these unprecedented delays for new planes from the giants, Boeing and Airbus. And that right there, that's the paradox. On the one hand, everyone wants to fly. Demand is just through the roof. But on the other hand, the production lines are struggling to keep up. So for the airlines, there's really only one choice. You got to keep your existing planes in the air for way longer than you ever planned.
And you can see the direct result right here. The average age of the entire global fleet of commercial planes is just climbing. Now, an older plane isn't like a classic car that gets better with age. No, it's the opposite. It needs far more intensive maintenance, more frequent part replacements, and much heavier, more expensive checks just to stay airworthy. And this isn't some small detail. It is the root cause of a much bigger problem. So when you've got all these aging planes that need constant work, what happens next? Well, that crisis creates this massive ripple effect, and it throws the entire market for spare parts into total chaos. It has become this high-stakes, frantic scramble to find the components you need to keep planes flying. Just picture this for a second. You need a critical part to fix an engine, and the manufacturer tells you it won't arrive for 12 months, a year. That is the reality a lot of airlines are facing. With brand new parts from the original equipment manufacturers, the OEMs, on these insane back orders, airlines have been forced into a desperate search for other solutions. So what are these alternatives? Where are they turning? Well, we're seeing a massive boom in two key areas. First, there's USM, which stands for Used Serviceable Material. These are totally safe, certified parts that are harvested from retired aircraft. They're cheaper, and most importantly, they're available now. Then you've got PMA parts. These are made by third-party companies, but they're certified by the FAA to be just as good as the original, sometimes even better. Both of these markets are just exploding right now. But get this, sometimes even that isn't enough. It's gotten so bad that airlines are resorting to an extreme measure called cannibalization. They are literally taking working parts, landing gear, avionics, you name it, off of one of their own planes that's parked on the ground just to get another one back in the air. That really shows you just how severe this shortage has become. And where is all this intense work happening? Well, it's not just in a hangar down the road. To handle this huge maintenance workload, over 47% of it is outsourced globally. We're talking about nearly 1,000 FAA-certified repair stations spread all across the planet, from Asia to Europe to Latin America. And while that global reach has its advantages, boy, does it create some vulnerabilities. And that vulnerability, well, it took one single, shocking event to expose it. A lightning strike that sent a shockwave through the very heart of this stressed-out global supply chain. So in 2023, what a lot of people in the industry had been secretly afraid of, it actually happened. A massive fraud scandal came to light. And this wasn't some minor bookkeeping error. This was a fundamental breach of the trust that the entire aviation safety system is built on. Okay, here's the bombshell. A UK-based company called AOG Technics was allegedly caught selling thousands of parts for the CFM56 engine. That's the engine on planes like the Boeing 737, the most common jetliner in the world. And they supposedly did it using fake safety paperwork. Think about that. Counterfeit parts with forged documents were actively flying on commercial planes with people on them. And the fallout? Oh, it was immediate. And it was chaos. Regulators issued a global mandate to inspect hundreds of engines. Planes were grounded all over the world to rip out these suspect parts. And suddenly, this word, traceability, the ability to prove a part's entire history, it wasn't just a logistics term anymore. It was a life-or-death issue. And of course, all these new, stricter checks clogged up the already strained supply chain even more. For the regulators back in Washington, the AOG Technics scandal, that was it. That was the wake-up call, the final straw. The old way of doing things was clearly not good enough. It was time for the hammer to fall. So the focus immediately swung to those nearly 1,000 FAA-certified foreign repair stations we talked about, the ones scattered all over the globe. The question became, how can regulators really ensure the safety and integrity of work that's being done thousands of miles away? The scale of that challenge is just immense. And they didn't just tweak the rules. The FAA Reauthorization Act of 2024 basically slammed all the old loopholes shut. Look at this. Before, inspections were announced in advance. Now, surprise, they're unannounced and they happen every single year. Drug and alcohol testing for workers, it wasn't required before. Now, it's mandatory. This wasn't a minor update. This was a complete revolution in oversight. So you might think that's the end of the story. Problem, reaction, solution. But actually, no. This is the beginning of a whole new era. An era that's going to be defined by a frantic race. A race to comply with these tough new rules and to innovate a way out of this crisis. And this brings us to the billion-dollar question, maybe even the trillion-dollar question, facing the entire industry right now. With a compliance deadline of 2027 looming, how in the world can this vast, disconnected global network of repair shops possibly meet these tough new American standards in time? The answer, more and more, seems to be pointing in one direction: technology. I mean, look at this. On one side, you have the old problem. How do you keep an eye on a facility that's thousands of miles away? But on the other, you have the promise of a real solution. Things like digital twins, AI-driven maintenance, and remote inspection tools that can basically bridge those vast distances. So when we talk about a real solution, what does that actually mean? Well, at the end of the day, it has to do these three things. They're non-negotiable. First, traceability. You have to be able to prove a part's back-to-birth history to stop fraud in its tracks. Second, integration. Your system has to seamlessly track all three types of parts: new, used, and third-party, all in one place. And finally, compliance. It has to automate all the tracking needed to meet these tough new FAA rules. Which leaves us with this one big final thought. The industry is at a massive fork in the road. A huge crisis has basically forced a technological revolution. So is all this new tech the key to making our skies safer than they have ever been? Or is this perfect storm of parts shortages, aging planes, and global tension just the beginning of an even more turbulent future?